elections were, well, maybe a bit off key?
We're privileged to have a contribution from one of the great creative talents of our time, Lin Manuel Miranda. May his beautiful voice be an inspiration to us.
Oh boy, let's get to the roundtable. Sahil Kapoor is a senior national reporter at NBC News. Welcome, Sahil.
Great to be with you.
And Maya King is a national politics reporter at Politico. It's always great to have you, Maya.
Hi, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
Right, so let's start in, I think, what was the lead story and maybe the main thing churning our stomachs much of the week, which was reflecting on and marking January 6th. Sahil, let me start with you. As you look at how Republicans were talking about and marking this somber anniversary on Thursday, what kind of politics did you see playing out?
We saw kind of two different worlds playing out on Capitol Hill, where I was through most of the day on January 6th. The only two Republicans that I saw were named Cheney, Liz Cheney and her father, Dick Cheney. They came to commemorate the event of January 6th, but most Republicans were absent in the Senate side. Many of them were at the funeral of the late Georgia Senator Johnny Isakson. That includes the Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, who was very critical of the events of January 6th, called it a failed insurrection on that night by an unhinged crowd. In the weeks and months since then, he has gone quiet about that day. He talks less about it today. He is more reluctant to criticize former President Trump, as he did shortly after that, holding him personally and morally responsible. So the needle has shifted dramatically in terms of the politics, where many Republicans who were horrified on that day have seen that the former president has fed conspiracy theories and in many cases lies to their base about a stolen election. Many voters believe those lies, and as a result, lawmakers on the Republican side have gone reluctant to fully embrace the reality of the 2020 election, which is that it was fair, it was legitimate, Joe Biden won. On the Democratic side, there's real dread that January 6th is not the end, that it was just the beginning of what could be a continued attempt, another attempt down the road to try to steal an election, Melissa.
All right, so Maya, clearly at least one way to counter a narrative is to offer a different narrative. So let me just ask this: how far along is the January 6th Commission in not only prosecuting insurrectionists, but really sort of developing a clear narrative that provides a different storyline for the American people?
I think what the commission is doing now essentially is trying to, as you said, create a more complete picture of exactly what happened that day. And what you're seeing is now them not only trying to bring out more details of the day, but also more of the power players and more of the folks who were involved in not only planning the events, but also encouraging the president to stand down. I think that's really what's going to play a large role, especially in the minds of voters, and also in Democrats crafting messaging around January 6th, hoping that that's something that will stick heading into the November election. I think one thing that I've heard from a number of people, particularly on the ground, is that January 6th as an anniversary this year, something that has wide-ranging impacts, particularly though only in Washington. And I think now what you see the commission doing is, one, racing against the clock, but again, also be able to name names and have a clear picture to paint to bring to voters before that ominous sort of election deadline.
First week of January 2022 means, yes, ding, 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 we are in a midterm year, which means everything, right? Every calculation, maybe this is always true, particularly for members of the House, but every calculation is about November, is about how it's going to play and what it's going to mean. So let me just start with you about the economy. Is this an economy likely to play well for Democrats come November, or are we facing some challenges as a nation that will really, portend poorly for them at the polls?
The economy looks like it does today, and the political landscape looks like it does today. Democrats are in big, big trouble, likely to lose control of the House of Representatives and probably also the Senate. But we don't know what the political landscape is going to look like. And of course, the economy has a lot to do with it. One of the big concerns over the last 5 or 6 months or so has been the issue of inflation. That is a real pocketbook concern for many Americans. The White House had initially downplayed it as transitory. story and has since recognized that that is not the case. But it is also an issue that could change dramatically between now and the midterm elections. And as a result, people could be feeling differently about it. Gas prices was an issue, that reared its head several months ago when they went up pretty dramatically. It is certainly plausible that they'll come down again by the midterm elections. And of course, COVID has everything to do with the economy as well, because the Delta variant and now the Omicron variant have created economic disruptions. So all of those things have created a frustration with the state of the economy, even though by some metrics it is booming. Jobs are being added, opportunities are there. The big question is what things look like in the months of August, September, October, when people fully make up their minds about the economy. If it improves, then Democrats have a much better shot. And they do, I should say, have a better shot at holding the Senate than they do the House. The House tends to be more subject to the whims of political moments and political backlashes to the president in power, but the Senate's a bit more of a complicated story.
Maya, let me come to Sail's point, though, that you can't talk economy without talking COVID-19 and the continuing pandemic crisis. But I want to turn it just a little bit. On the one hand, there are the realities of the pandemic, but there's also simply a perception about whether or not the Biden administration is managing and handling this well. So Maya, I'm asking sort of where, when you're looking at the Biden approval numbers right now around COVID-19, what is your crystal ball telling you about the fall?
Well, I think I wish I had a crystal ball because
I mean, you were like, wait, I have a crystal ball? Tell us, where is this?
Because it's the perception of this administration's handling of COVID-19, right? I mean, the president was elected in large part because of his messaging on COVID, saying that he would be the president who would get the country out of COVID. And now, a year later, that isn't quite the case. And so this is not only how voters are perceiving this administration, but I think it's how this administration is messaging to its voters and the calm or even chaos that it is putting forth to constituents. One thing that I believe, would overshadow this, hopefully we're out of COVID by November, because I think that could be another issue for this administration and for Democrats writ large, is testing shortages and how that also factors in to the supply chain. Like, there's a number of different things. I think that COVID is a bigger part of a lot of the other issues taking place in the country right now. And so as Biden and his allies aim to message and project calm, to say that they have these crises under control, I think as long as COVID is raging, it's a lot harder for voters to understand that and to believe that. And that also plays, that has a direct role in voter enthusiasm, which is something that they're absolutely going to need heading into November.
Is there any possibility that Build Back Better is going to emerge again, at least in some form, and make a difference come November?
Well, not as it passed the House of Representatives. That version is not coming back, but there is an opening for Senate Democrats to pass a different version, and I think their path is pretty clear to me based on multiple conversations I've had with Senator Joe Manchin, who is the holdout. The path to winning his vote seems fairly clear to me. It's to do fewer programs, to do them well, to make them last over a 10-year period, and make sure they're funded. Manchin's problem with the House bill is that it includes a lot of programs, many programs, some of which are set to expire in a year or two or three, but are paid for with taxes and revenues and savings that last for a decade. Manchin views that as gimmicky. His attitude is that every program is likely going to be extended anyway, and as a result, it needs to be paid for over the long haul. So what will it require? It means making painful sacrifices. Do they keep the enhanced child tax credit, or do they keep universal pre-K? Do they keep the climate change provisions, or maybe make some changes or limits to the healthcare subsidies? This is a huge piece of President Biden's domestic agenda. This is his one chance to create, new programs that will outlast him far down the road, which is something that, of course, his predecessor, his Democratic predecessor, Barack Obama, did with the Affordable Care Act. This is something that he has aspired to, and the Build Back Better Act is a smorgasbord of policies that Democrats have been poll testing and writing for many years. They know these are popular. This bill has remained popular. That's such an irony about this, Melissa. This bill has remained popular even as the president's rating has fallen quite a bit. The country likes what's in this bill, the new safety net programs, the taxes on the wealthy and corporations, the prescription drug savings. The White House faces a challenging task of putting it back together, but they have a path to doing it.
All right, stick with us, Maya. I'm going to pivot to you on some parts of that same question when we come right back.
The Takeaway is supported by Indeed with Instant Match, a hiring tool instantly delivering to businesses a list of candidates whose resume on Indeed matched the job description. Learn more at Indeed.com/credit.
Babbel, the language app designed to teach real-life conversations. Anyone can learn to speak a new language with Babbel's interactive lessons, games, podcasts, and live online classes. Learn more at babbel.com/publicradio.
And from BetterHelp Online Counseling. BetterHelp, connecting people with a therapist in a private online environment for issues like depression, anxiety, and relationships. 17,000 therapists are available through BetterHelp using a computer or smartphone. Learn more at betterhelp.com/public.
The podcast version of The Takeaway is available at thetakeaway.org or anywhere you get audio. There's extra audio from interviews and more of your take. Subscribe, follow, and tell your friends.
When you turn on WHYY, I hope you get a broader sense of the world. We all come to any news product with our own view of the world. And I just hope it gets a tiny bit wider every time you listen. And whatever you hear changes your body of knowledge just a little bit. This is Avi Wolfman Arent. Join me middays on WHYY 90.9 FM.
To The Takeaway with Melissa Harris Perry from WNYC and PRX in collaboration with WGBH Radio in Boston.
All right, let's keep it moving on this politics takeaway today. Still with me are Maya King from Politico and Sahil Kapoor from NBC News. So Maya, let me come to you before the break. We were talking about Build Back Better, and I so appreciate, Sahil, the way that you were giving us this notion of the painful choices, but also of kind of the popularity of the policies within the context of Build Back Better, even as there is declining support for the president's approval ratings. So Maya, let me ask if there's a way that legislators might be thinking about, lawmakers might be thinking about threading that needle. They're the ones, after all, that will be on the ballot in the midterms. Where do you see maybe some of these painful choice cuts happening? Where are they going to make the push to pass the policies that will have a real impact, not only in the country, but on their own re-election chances?
You know, I'm thinking less about where they might make these cuts in terms of how they might figure out, different policies that could sort of be put on the chopping block, though I know that's a huge part of this. I think, though, at the same time, what they're really looking at and what legislators are looking at is how voters are going to respond to this and what pressure they need to apply to their colleagues accordingly. My colleagues out on Friday with this really interesting story about how now, related more to filibuster reform, you see folks like Bill Clinton and even Oprah Winfrey trying to pressure Joe Manchin to reform the filibuster. And so the question in my mind now is this the route that other Democrats are going to take to be able to push this legislation through? Focusing on what voters want, obviously the big thing here is the popularity of this legislation. I don't think, that can be discounted.